Hey guys, author MJ Gallagher here and welcome back to Rebirth Revealed, a series presented and funded by KupoCon. This episode covers the details and lore you may have missed in Chapter 3, Deeper into Darkness. Spoilers beyond this part of the game are minimal, but as always, please beware of likely spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII, its remake, and the compilation in general. So let's hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and descend into the video. The chapter begins with the party entering the Mithril mine, previously identified as an old network of subterranean tunnels between the grasslands and the Junon region. With the presence of monsters and the threat of Sephiroth lingering in the darkness ahead, they collectively nominate Cloud to take the lead. This is where we get yet another example of the young swordsman quoting a fee of 2,000 gil, a subject I've discussed already in the series, and I'll come back to it again in greater detail at the end of the video. In response, however, Aerith remarks that 2,000 gil is enough for her standard course twice. This line may have been lost on many players, particularly those unfamiliar with Final Fantasy VII Remake. The standard course Aerith is referring to is one of the hand massage treatments Cloud can pay for at Madame M's parlour during the wall market sequence of that game. Barrett, a former coal miner himself, then changes the conversation to Mithril. He explains that Mithril is a rare mineral that has never been found outside these caves and was once a prized commodity before Shinra-made alloys surpassed it in durability. This is an interesting twist on a fictional metal ore that's existed in various forms throughout the Final Fantasy series, and was invented by famed fantasy author J.R.R. Tolkien. In Tolkien's works, however, Mithril is among the most precious materials in the world, found only in the dwarven mines of Khazad Dûn. Barrett also tells the others that the site was a working mine until not all that long ago. Believe it or not, this isn't new information, because a couple of Kalm's residents make reference to it in the original Final Fantasy VII. They claim the mine was closed due to an increase in monster numbers, costing many men their livelihood. In Rebirth though, an alternative history is presented in one of the World Intel panels. It says that after Mithril lost its value, the mine was converted by the Republic of Junon into a tourist attraction and a public route through the mountains. Unfortunately, when Shinra triumphed over the Republic, the tunnel was abandoned and much of it fell into disrepair. Despite this, Rebirth grants the player an opportunity to pay tribute to the mineral's illustrious past by including mithril ore as a transmutable material for crafting accessories. We learn later in the game that the collapse of the Republic occurred a generation earlier, suggesting the mithril mine has actually been out of commission for well over a decade. As the party passes through the caves, remnants of the tourist points are clearly visible, with numerous displays and information panels. One of these even features the image of a vast chasm and underground lake at its depths, perhaps a subtle foreshadowing of the chapter's events. While Final Fantasy VII itself does not utilise the traditional job class system of previous titles, certain characters can easily be categorised. For example, Aerith is a mage, Cid is a dragoon, and Tifa is a monk. I highlighted in the initial episode of this series that there's an Easter egg in the Nibelheim flashback which relates to another monk-type fighter, Zell from Final Fantasy VIII. The self gloves that can be acquired for Tifa in this chapter may be a similar Easter egg. The first dedicated monk-type character to be named in the franchise is Yang from Final Fantasy IV. Later in that story, after Yang is thought to have sacrificed himself, he can be found in the Sylph Cave of the Underworld, being looked after by the fairy-like Sylphs. The player can subsequently obtain the Sylph Eidolon, or Summon, which deals wind elemental damage, albeit this aspect is exclusive to the 3D remakes. Therefore, through Tifa's connection to Yang, we can establish a link between the Mithril mine and the underground cave of the Sylphs, as well as the Eidolon's elemental affiliation and the wind aspect ability of the Sylph gloves, Reverse Gale. Just as in the original game, Cloud and the others will eventually stumble upon the Turks, although the player is afforded the chance to eavesdrop on them this time. Rude and Elena discuss their colleague Reno being instructed to take time off to recuperate. This is consistent with the old Final Fantasy VII, where Reno was injured by the party during their battle on the Sector 7 pillar. In Remake, however, Reno is shown with Rude and Tseng in Turks HQ at the end of Chapter 16, so it's possible this recuperation period was not initially planned. Sadly, Reno's Japanese voice actor Keiji Fujiwara passed away in 2020, so the character's absence for the majority of Rebirth may be a mark of respect. Elena suggests that Reno's R&R sounds like an expenses paid vacation. This too has precedent in the compilation. Such examples include Zack being sent to Costa del Sol after he is forced to kill his friend and soldier mentor Angeal during Crisis Core, and the player running into the Turks themselves in Wutai's Turtles Paradise Bar during Final Fantasy VII. Elena goes on to grumble about their assignment to track the robed figures, remarking that Tseng would put them down if he was here. She speaks with a tone of admiration, which may be a callback to the old game and a conversation between Reno and Rude where it's proposed that Elena has feelings for their boss. Once the Turks are alerted to Cloud, Tifa and Aerith's presence, Elena is properly introduced. Her promotion to this infamous branch of Shinra's General Affairs Division is explicitly correlated with Reno being out of action, but the background to why such a hot-headed individual is even on the Turks' radar was revealed in the Japanese-only mobile game Before Crisis. Elena's enemy intel screen touches on this by stating she distinguished herself at Shinra's military academy, but what it doesn't disclose is that she's both the daughter of one of the school's firearms instructors and the younger sister of a former Turk. The girl herself appears in a student uniform in episode 22 of Before Crisis and tries to stop Avalanche operatives on her own before being kidnapped. What's especially interesting about all of this is that Elena's sister, who goes into hiding at the end of the game along with her fellow playable Turks, wields a handgun, but sibling rivalry motivates Elena to specialise in a different combat discipline. Nevertheless, despite primarily using martial arts when fought in the original Final Fantasy VII, the new recruit does have a machine pistol in battle during Rebirth. That said, she is shown in a flashback during Advent Children Complete to be firing a gun at Kadaj, Loz and Yazoo in the Northern Cave. If you look closely, you might also spot that her weapon is in fact pink and is decorated with flowers, butterflies, diamonds and a princess crown. And if you slow the moment when Elena raises her fist at the start of the fight, you can see a studded bracelet around her left wrist. This may be a reference to the Minerva band accessory that can be stolen from her during battle in the old game, and whose comparable design is displayed in the Ultimania Omega. For much of the skirmish, Elena will use her martial arts skills. Included in her moveset is an attack called Elena Knuckle, where she swings her arm in circles to build momentum in a somewhat cartoonish manner. According to Rebirth's Ultimania, this is a deliberate allusion to a scene from Final Fantasy VII at Icicle Inn. The context here is that she throws a powerful punch at Cloud because she thinks he's responsible for Tseng's critical injuries, but dodging it will cause her to tumble down the snowy hillside. I highlighted in my Remake video series that during the fight with Rude in Chapter 8, he will actively avoid hurting Aerith because the Turks are duty bound to protect her. Similarly, in Chapter 12, he limits his assaults on Tifa, as, by his own admission in the original game, he has a crush on her. While Rude is slightly less restrained throughout this battle, he'll still apologise if you engage him with either Tifa or Aerith. After the clash, Barrett and Red 13 arrive and force the Turks to surrender, only for Tseng to emerge from the shadows. He is all too aware of Barrett's Avalanche cell and their anti-Shinra extremism back in Midgar, not to mention the entire plot of Before Crisis and the years of conflict between the Turks and Avalanche's militant branch, which is why he challenges the revolutionary to look in the mirror if he wants someone to blame for the innocent lives lost. Tseng then gazes directly at Cloud and charges him with taking care of Aerith. Final Fantasy VII Remake addresses the historic relationship between Aerith and Tseng, whom the Flower Girl has known since she was a child, even being aware that he was monitoring her on behalf of Shinra. That said, there's a degree of mutual respect between the two. For instance, during episode 11 of Before Crisis, Tseng reveals to the player Turk that he will not return the Ancient to the Shinra building without her consent, which Aerith later uses as a bargaining tool to have him leave Marlene with Elmira in exchange for her cooperation. A more recent example can be found in the Aerith mini-episode of the mobile game Ever Crisis, in which she shares her lunch with Tseng as thanks for keeping her safe. What's curious about him asking Cloud to watch over Aerith, however, is that Tseng should know that the blonde swordsman's past isn't what he claims. As depicted in Crisis Core, not only do the Turks spend most of a year pursuing Zack and Cloud after they escape Hojo's laboratory in Nibelheim, but Tseng and Cloud, who was an infantryman at the time, went on a mission together to Modeoheim. Furthermore, on an even deeper level, this scene is a reflection of the last words ever spoken to Tseng by Zack, who told the Turk he was counting on him to look after Aerith. Despite all this, Elena shows some nifty football skills, or soccer skills, to her international friends, and boots a live grenade straight at Cloud, Tifa and Aerith. Red 13 sprints and knocks the explosive away in a leaping roll. Weirdly, this is now the second instance in as many chapters that links the beast to football. After Red formally joins the party outside the inn at Calm, you can find a boy across the plaza holding a traditional soccer ball. It's almost as if Rebirth wants to plant this particular association in the player's mind. Red 13's heroic goalkeeping efforts cannot prevent the grenade's blast causing the group to plunge into the depths of the Mithril mine. It's in this sequence that the player is given control of Barrett, thus mirroring Chapter 13 of Remake, in which he falls into an underground area and must fight his way back up to rejoin his comrades. Luckily for Barrett, having an enormous gun attached to one arm does not impede him from climbing rock faces of eye-watering heights. Joking aside, he does reaffirm in one of the chapter's earlier cutscenes that his experience of working in the coal mines of Corel means that he knows what he's doing in the subterranean environment. Red 13 echoes this in that he too is no stranger to caves. This could be a little bit of foreshadowing for what's to come when he returns to his hometown, but it might also be a callback to episode 18 of Before Crisis, where Red is shown to easily navigate the caverns of Cosmo Canyon as he attempts to stop the Turks or Avalanche operatives from capturing his friend Denna. In the mine's depths, Barrett and Red 13 discover the body of a robed figure. Red comments that Hojo's lab at Shinra HQ was filled with men like this. I spoke at great length in my Remake series about the history of these individuals, as revealed in the official short story Picturing the Past from scenario writer Kazushige Nojima, and I provided a brief summary in the third episode of this series, so I won't linger on the topic here. The important thing to take away is the timescale. Red 13 surrenders his freedom to the Turks in the aforementioned Before Crisis episode, which occurs just over a year before the main events of Final Fantasy VII. Picturing the Past, meanwhile, confirms that one such robed figure attacked Aerith while she was still a child living in the Shinra building. This implies that the mysterious men and women have been an ongoing part of Hojo's experiments for at least 15 years, which helps to explain why there are so many of them. While there's a small amount of minecart manoeuvring in Cloud's segment of the chapter, the real puzzle-solving element is reserved for Barrett. Incredibly, this may be yet another callback to Before Crisis. In episode 16 of that game, Barrett assists the player Turk as they traverse Corel Mine, thrusting the minecarts along the tracks to clear a number of hazards and avalanche blockades. This even includes pulling levers to switch the directions of the rails. The section climaxes with a battle against a Mithril Golem, a boss featured in one of the first trailers for Rebirth. The enemy intel for the Fiend says that Mako leaking into the rocks brought it to life, which implies spirit energy can give animation or even sentience to organic matter that is not typically alive. While this might seem like a new and bizarre piece of lore, the original Final Fantasy VII contains monsters such as the ice golems of the Great Glacier, or the Russian doll-like Grangolans near Costa del Sol, which seem to defy the laws of nature. Additionally, it's perhaps not a coincidence that the sequence in which the player controls Barrett has a boss that begins the fight with a missing right arm, then, in the second phase of battle, forms a lethal appendage where its right hand would be. Continued attacks will cause said appendage to shatter, crippling the limb until it regenerates a replacement. The loss of Barrett's own right arm will be explored in due course. And finally, when Barrett and Red ascend to the level of the mine where the others are waiting, they learn that one of the bridges is out of commission. Barrett agrees to help them resolve the issue for a price of 2,000 gil. This is of special interest because the recurring theme of this sum being important to Cloud has now evolved into a running joke between the party members. Further attention is drawn to the subject by the corresponding part of the main quest being titled 2 Grand Gig, and Aerith teasing Barrett that he owes the others the same figure after she raises the gateway for him and Red to pass through. On top of that, eagle-eyed fans may have noted there are 2 treasure chests that can be unlocked during this mini-scenario. The first contains 1000 gil, while the second contains a high ether. It just so happens that the exact amount the player can sell a high ether for is 1000 gil, so the total monetary value of the items obtained from the chests is also 2 grand. As I touched on at the beginning of the video, I've already spoken in this series about the relevance of 2000 gil to Cloud. The background is provided in Kazushige Najima's short story 2000 gil to Become a Hero, which features in Rebirth's World Preview art book, released in Japan immediately prior to the game's launch. A huge shout out to Turquoise Hammer for translating. Anyway, according to Cloud's mother, his dad used to say that with 2000 gil in their wallet, a person could go anywhere they wanted and start afresh. However, there is a second part to this that I haven't yet mentioned. The short tale centres around Cloud while he's waiting at a transport station for a Shinra helicopter, having left Nibelheim to enlist in the military. Ignoring a veteran's advice that money can make life in the barracks a lot easier, Cloud is swayed by the words of a man who claims to be a Turk scouting for soldier candidates. He hands over the 2 grand in his bag on the promise of a fast-tracked route into the ranks of the elite force, hence the title of the story, but is later informed by a real Turk that he's been scammed. With his 2000 gil gone, Cloud comes to the realisation that he may never be someone special. To put all this into context, the blonde swordsman charging 2 grand for his services in the present day does not simply relate to his father's philosophy that this amount could be used to make a fresh start. It ties directly into how Cloud perceives his own identity as a former soldier first class, the best of the best. Cloud's identity, of course, is at the very heart of Final Fantasy VII. Well everyone, that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I invite you to check out all future episodes on KupoCon's channel. If you're interested in the lore side of things, my own books, Norse myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII and Greek myths that inspired Final Fantasy VII, are both available on Amazon. As always, I'd especially like to thank all of KupoCon's Patreon subscribers for your continued support. Without your backing, productions such as this would not be possible. If you're not already a patron, please do consider joining for some incredible KupoCon exclusives. But for now, take care. I'm MJ Gallagher, and I'll speak to you again soon.